Chapter 29. 3 Small Words. He was staring straight into the kaleidoscopic eyes of Maya, who sat motionless in a dimly lit corner of the room with her arms folded. A warm glow inside his chest brought him excitement, but only for a moment that was regrettably short-lived. The absence in her eyes was enough to drag back the guilt and shame of his actions with immediate effect. There were many things he wanted to say to her, but simply couldn't find the courage to push the words across his lips. And the longer he waited, the more impossible it became to break through the barrier of silence. He reluctantly averted his eyes from the shattered stars he wished he could stare into for the remaining days of his life.
As a child,
She suddenly said to end the peaceless quietness.
I always followed Mother wherever she went like a clingy kitten. I looked up to her. She was my hero, you see. People called her a goddess and worshipped her like one. For some reason, I thought that by basking in her radiance, maybe they would see me as a goddess as well, even if only by association.
Her voice was calm but marred by a thick layer of melancholy.
Maya.
They didn't.
She went on undisturbed.
It was actually quite the opposite. By standing in the shadow of a goddess, it became all the more apparent that I was not. I was the child that never should have been born, the bloodthorn who didn't look like a bloodthorn, act like a bloodthorn, or even possess the abilities of a bloodthorn. Without saying my name in full, no one would have guessed I'm a bloodthorn at all.
It wasn't scorn that coloured her words, but rather an apologetic remorse.
Nobody talked about my deviation. But I knew that they knew, and I was sure that they knew whatever I knew. I could see it in the way they looked at me, the unspoken judgment in their eyes, the permanent annotation they scribbled next to my name. Even my own clan saw me as an outsider.
She let out a chuckle without humour.
My family loves me, I know that. Never questioned it for longer than a few seconds. And I love them. Really, I do. But the truth is that I never had the feeling I truly belonged. Every time I would say, or even hear the name Maya Bloodthorn, I knew it was all just a giant mockery everybody played along to appease my father. After all, who would dare to upset the mighty Mycon Bloodthorn, right?
Maya,
Please don't interrupt me when I'm in the middle of something important, Captain.
Captain.
He murmured. For a second, his thoughts trailed off to Jackdaw Blackshaw, but he willed himself to stay focused on Maya. Nothing was more important than to make things right with her. Not the bitter hatred for the captain that he inherited from the dragon called Ant Goldwing. Not the whirlwind of foreign thoughts that wreaked havoc on his mind and had him questioning his own identity. And not the fact that he was referred to as this Baratok fellow by Jackdaw and Saraki. Nothing.
People always told me that I have Mother's beauty and grace. Though flattering, of course, I only saw it as just another way of saying that I am nothing like Father. It's fine, though. The realm might see me as some kind of wonder, but I have already come to accept the fact that I will forever be the black sheep of my family. The very first female to be born in the Bloodthorn lineage, and she doesn't even possess any of the clan's characteristics. It's funny, isn't it? My biggest accomplishment in life is the fact that I was born at all. I'm proud to carry Father's name, don't get me wrong, but in my heart, I have always felt that I was supposed to be Maya Seraphine, a name without the need of a footnote or additional explanations. By now, you're probably wondering if there is any point to my story, or if I'm just another spoiled girl, lamenting over broken fingernails while the entire world is set ablaze. Well, I may very well be that girl, but what I'm trying to tell you is that I have always felt lonely. No place my heart could call home, no one to share my feelings with. And of course, the spoiled girl thought that she was the only one in the world who felt that way.
She drew a deep breath and deliberately took a moment to set aside any emotions that had crawled onto the surface. It was very clear, however, that her composure required a massive amount of effort, and even then, she couldn't completely keep her eyes dry.
Why are you telling me this?
Cato asked sullenly. He desperately wanted to be the one to offer her comfort, but couldn't even bear to look into the green, gold, bronze, aquamarine and everything in between that were wildly shimmering behind a translucent curtain.
I was about 10 or 11,
she continued, ignoring his question. She had no choice but to keep going, otherwise she might have actually burst into tears.
Mother was summoned to an emergency meeting, and for some reason decided to bring me along with her. Please understand that she never allowed me anywhere near the grown-up talks, so naturally, I was very excited and nervous to finally enter the belly of the cat. I felt so small, so terribly insignificant in the presence of all these legendary figures. Eamon Everlong, Cyrus Eunoia, Hannah Gallowworth. Those were names I would normally only hear in stories. I remember hiding behind Mother, holding tightly onto her robe until my knuckles turned white. Apparently there had been some kind of accident at Ethelwomb and the grown-ups were talking about something that gravely upset Mother. Cronus Metalung, who at the time was a teacher at the academy, blustered about how he had stopped the monster. At first, I thought that he meant Father, who was absent from the meeting due to Grandfather's illness. You know, because Father had been called the Monster of Mengarovi by outsiders before. I was relieved to find out they were talking about someone else when Grandmaster Eamon called the monster by his actual name.
Her eyes lit up like a pair of dying embers being reignited by the passing of a gentle breeze.
I remember so clearly how much fear it had instilled into me. Simply by giving something as abstract as a monster a name, it became very real all of the sudden. My imagination was running wild, attempting to visualize a monster in my mind that would fit the name. I must admit that I imagined the most horrible things. Things that no little girl should ever think of. Things that shouldn't even exist in the most terrifying nightmares. Preceptor Cronus was declaring his victory over the monster with a grin on his face, but it wasn't an expression of joy or satisfaction at all. Nearly crushed every single bone in his body. The monster won't get up anytime soon. I did everyone a favor, he shouted proudly across the belly. I did not particularly like Preceptor Cronus. He carried a rancid smell around him that made me want to vomit. But I do remember agreeing with him wholeheartedly, despite not even knowing the whole story. After all, monsters aren't called monsters without reason, right?
Right.
Cato whispered along like a dying man exhaling his final breath.
Mother was furious, however. Absolutely fuming. It still scares me a bit when I think about it. I had never seen her like that before. She looked ready to take out everyone in the belly, then and there. I didn't understand. Why would she show so much sympathy for a monster? We have mistreated him all his life. Hasn't he suffered enough already? You should be ashamed of yourself, she hissed, and stormed off to the infirmary, dragging me along by my armpit. And there, I stood face to face with the monster. I immediately understood why Mother was so upset. The monster wasn't frightening at all. The images I had in my mind. The monster was just a boy. He looked so fragile, so harmless. How could anyone see this boy, who couldn't have been much older than my own brother, as a threat, a danger?
She paused and held her eyes on Cato until he could feel them burning through his soul.
I felt strangely attracted to the boy.
She continued with the same flat voice.
I mean, I'm not afraid to admit that he was pretty handsome, even in his horrible condition. But something else was pulling me closer to him, and I was simply powerless to resist. Before I knew what was happening, I was holding his hand. As soon as our skins touched, black fumes rose from his chest and slowly transformed into a shapeless figure that hovered above him. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. How was it possible that his aura became visible to the naked eye? Was Preceptor Cronus in his right to inflict such severe punishment? Could it be that the boy really was a monster? I turned to Mother, hoping to find some sort of reassurance or protection, but what I saw instead shocked me to my core. She was staring at the black figure with such genuine adoration, such intense happiness. For a moment, I was even frightened by my own mother, but then she smiled at me with tearful eyes and nodded, as if encouraging me to accept some kind of offer, as if destiny had finally come to pick me up. I turned back to the boy, somehow still holding on to his hand, but I flinched when I saw that his eyes had opened in the meantime. I will never forget that moment. His eyes were golden brown, like the dying rays of a sunset shining through an autumn leaf. He was staring at me, as if he were staring at a goddess. Can you believe that? No one has ever looked at me like that before. Suddenly, his dark aura drew me in for an embrace. I was terrified and began to cry, but never thought about letting go of the boy's hand, because I saw in his eyes that he was just as scared as I was. I couldn't abandon him. He was all alone. Then he said something that erased all my fears. 3 small words to completely change the way I felt about the monster.
Please forgive me,
Cato said quietly. He finally conquered his fear to look her in the eyes again, but still surrendered to his guilt and shame.
Oh, have you heard this story before?
A hint of her characteristic playfulness finally made its welcome return in her voice. He gave her no immediate answer, only just now realizing that it was Maya he saw when he woke up in that infirmary all those years ago. He had been worshipping the wrong goddess all along.
If you have heard this story before, why do you think the monster asked for my forgiveness?
She rose from her seat and slowly approached his bedside. He remained silent and felt her warmth as she sat down beside him. Her eyes were intensely fixed on him. He had never felt so helpless and intimidated before, but all he wished for was to bury himself inside her arms.
Because the monster hates to see you in tears,
He finally said, drowning in tears of his own. She gave him a thin smile and laid a hand on his cheek. Her touch was an ointment on a burning wound.
3 small words to convince me the boy couldn't possibly be a monster.
She said and softly ran her fingers over his jowls.
I almost killed you.
He hated himself for having to say it, especially at an intimate moment like this. But if he wasn't able to escape his shame, he would rather turn around and face his fate as quickly as possible. Not that rushing through it lessened the pain of his heartbreak. Having it said aloud actually made everything feel exponentially worse.
But you didn't.
She leaned in close enough for him to feel her breath on his skin.
You managed to stop yourself because you, as you said so yourself, hate to see me in tears.
If I hadn't been knocked unconscious, my aura would have...
Do not underestimate me. I could have vanished at any given moment, but I needed to know that you were still there, hidden somewhere inside that hateful character.
He turned his eyes away from her.
That character has every reason to be as hateful as he is.
His voice was hoarse, like the sound of heavy boots shuffling along a gravel road.
I won't pretend to understand what you're going through. I just want to make sure my captain is safe. And I want you to know that if you would like some company on your road to recovery, I am here for you.
I don't understand how you can still trust me.
Haven't I told you already? Our destinies are entwined, Cato Knight. I have known for over a decade. When your dark aura embraced me all those years ago, something inside me had changed. I remember everything fading to black, but it felt so right to be embraced by the dark energy.
She paused and gave him a peculiar look.
You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you?
He shook his head in silence.
I fell into a deep sleep for several months. When I woke up, I discovered that I was gifted with Ava's blessing.
Ava Seraphine,
He whispered absently. She frowned and bounced back a little, but before she was able to say anything else, the door to the bedroom opened behind her back. Raven strode in with a grim look on his face and went down on one knee beside Maya. He lowered his head without saying a word and held his eyes firmly on the floor. But Cato only had eyes for one person in the room. He slowly raised his hand to reach for Maya's face. The touch was everything he hoped it to be, soft, warm, precious. It was perfect. She was perfect. He wished he could stay inside that blissful moment forever.
Raven, wait!
Rain's muffled voice sounded from somewhere outside the bedroom.
Lord Cato is still... Oh!
She barged into the room, heavily panting and holding a silver tray with a bowl of onion soup.
Lady Maya,
She said, obviously surprised by her presence.
I wasn't aware that you were already here.
Blondie!
Maya responded in an uplifting tone. She got up from the bed and arched her back in a yawn.
Come with me. The captain and lieutenant have important matters they need to discuss.
But I have brought soup for Lord Cato.
Rain said, awkwardly standing in the middle of the doorway.
Here, give me that.
Maya said, snatching the tray out of Rain's hands and placing it on the nightstand next to the bed.
Glad to have you back, Cap.
She whispered to Cato, sent him a wink, and turned around.
Let's go enjoy the sunset together, Blondie.
But
Rain protested while being dragged out of the room by her elbow.
be careful, my lord, it's still hot.
She managed to say before her voice faded to a silence. Cato was still staring at the door, long after Maya and Rain were already gone. It was only when he became aware of the tension inside the room that he noticed Raven's presence, truly noticed him, and understood that there were still plenty of things he needed to apologize for.